Hi, I'm Steve, you're watching Gear Stuff and Things, and today we're going to talk about the Line6 HX Stomp and why I think it is the ultimate tool for any guitar player or bass player out there. Alright, before we get any further into the video, I want to take a minute to thank our new sponsor, Monkey Wires Cabling. Monkey Wires is a cable company based out of the US. They make incredibly well-made, handmade guitar, speaker, MIDI, XLR, and any type of cable you can imagine. They make it, and they make an incredible version of it. If you're someone who has been considering upgrading your current cables, or if you're someone who has just gotten the cheapest cables that the store offers and you're having issues with shorts, say you just got the cheapest cables that Amazon offers, or you got something out of the bargain bin perhaps at your local music store and you're having issues, or you just want something better, Monkey Wires is the option. Go with Monkey Wires. It's a small boutique company. They care about you. They care about the quality of the product they're providing you. They care about the tone. They have great customer support. It's still one of those things where you can actually reach out to the person who made the product, get the answers you need. If you have ideas, you can go back and forth with them. A great company, such great cables. I'll put up a little video here of the cables they sent me for the channel. I'm going to be using those going forward, and I can't encourage you enough to go check out the fine folks at Monkey Wires and get yourself some super cool cables made. I'm sure there are other companies out there, but none of them are going to give you the same quality product and the same quality treatment that the fine folks at Monkey Wires will. So now that that's out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into the playthrough. Alright, and now that you've heard the playthrough, all of the tones you heard for the bass and the guitar came right out of this HX Stomp from the fine folks at Line6. If you're not familiar with the HX Stomp, it is essentially the Helix unit condensed into this small package. It's about the size of two standard MXR sized pedals. I'll put a little video up there for visual reference. It is everything in the Helix condensed. All of the amps, cabs, effects, all of that stuff right here in this little package that will fit on just about any board or inside any bag. And that's one of the main things to take into consideration with this. If you're not familiar with it though, look up the Helix, look up these units, but I imagine you are. If you found this video, you're probably familiar with them. And if you're not, it's something that I use frequently on the channel. Almost all of the videos feature the Helix products in some way. Most recently, it's almost always been the HX Stomp, and my Helix patches that I've made available for free, which you'll find a link to in the description, are all designed to function on the Stomp first, because there's a limitation of 6 blocks. But don't treat that as a limitation, because it certainly isn't. You can do a lot with a little in this scenario. But let's get into a few more things as to why I think it's incredible. So it's small, it's tiny, it's portable, it will fit on a small pedal board, it will fit in your backpack. If you need a backup, say you're using one of the bigger units, say you're using a different product altogether, or you just have an amp that you use, a regular tube amp you take out and use, and say it goes out on you, having this in your backpack or your gig bag or whatever is going to be a lifesaver. But also, if you just want to build a small fly rig, this is the ticket. You can literally just take this, by the way, if you're playing somewhere that has a great PA system, you can just run direct out of this, and that's all you need. You'll have monitors, front of house is going to get everything they need. It's all right here, self-contained. This guy, a couple cables, and your guitar could be all you take to a show. If that's not enough of a reason to be interested in it, I don't know what is. But let's get into the other things that I think make it the ultimate device for someone who is playing guitar or bass, or if you're someone who has a home studio or even a fully functional professional studio and you just want a Swiss Army knife of tones and solutions for any sort of genre that comes up. Say you've never recorded a certain type of band and they're looking for a certain tone and you don't have it, now you do. Say you want to experiment with something different and you don't have a ton of amps, a ton of options for amps, now you do. Ins and outs on this little device. I mean, where do we start? Let's just start with the coolest one. It's fully MIDI capable. So if you wanted to run it with your DAW and have your DAW change all of your presets for a song, if you're playing with backing tracks, running it through MIDI allows you to do that. You can also use aftermarket switchers, which will expand upon the 3 buttons you see here and have up to an additional 3, 6, 8. There's a company called Morningstar that makes a product called the MC3, MC6, and MC8, and that allows you to expand upon this and actually get such detailed control over the things that are in here that, you know, it might as well be a full Helix at that point once you incorporate those units. But fully MIDI capable, so take that into consideration. You have a headphone out there, then you have stereo ins and outs. So you can do 4-cable method, you can do a single mono in, run it out in stereo to 2 speakers, or 2 cabs, 2 amps, whatever it is you're using. You have an expression out. This allows you to add any sort of third-party expression pedal or Line6's proprietary expression pedal, so the wah style thing. Or you can get something like a 2-button unit from Mission Engineering or Analog Endeavors that allows you to add an extra 2 buttons to this whole thing. And I think that's kind of the ticket if you want a small setup and don't want to take much more than this. So moving from that, you have an effects loop. These are all fully assignable too, so you don't necessarily have to use them for what you see here, but you can and you should. So you have an effects loop, so if you want to run external pedals in and you want them to be, you know, 4-cable method, you want to use your delays and reverbs, you know, in that pattern, this is one way to do it. If you want to just have one pedal that you pull in and out using one of these buttons, you can do that as well. You can pull an entire loop of stuff out. And anybody who's familiar with true bypass loopers or that sort of thing knows what I'm getting at here. Lots of flexibility there. You have a SIND that is stereo out. This can be used to be sending a separate SIND to the front of house. You can send one signal to an amp, the other signal to a front of house. There's so many options as far as routing and flexibility with just the ins and outs on this. Another super cool bit of functionality with this is that you can use third-party impulse responses. So if you don't like the cabs that are built in here, there is no shortage of great impulse responses out there from people like Own Hammer or ML Sound Labs, so on and so forth. Line6 has a great variety of them on their website. If you don't like the stuff that you're getting built into it as far as cabs, there's something out there for you. Even the actual speaker manufacturers like Celestion and Eminence make their own impulse responses now. So you can get really great stuff and really tweak this to your heart's delight. This is a fully functional audio interface. It's all the tones from the Helix. You're able to run them directly into your DAW using this. You can use the headphone out or the stereo out here and run that to a set of monitors. You could actually do both if you wanted to. And this is your entire audio interface with your computer as well as your effects unit for all your amps and processing. I mean, I don't know what else to say. That's pretty incredible. Something that is this versatile. All right, so getting into the connectivity and the ways you can use the HX Stomp. You can use it by itself, as I mentioned previously. Just use it, plug into a power amp, plug into a PA. Use it to build a small pedal board if you've got one of those super cool little pedal-sized power amps, and I'll put a little video up here to show you how you could do something like that. You could do a setup like that into a real cabinet, have one of the SINs go into a PA, as I mentioned previously. You could also use it as just a standalone amp and cabinet on a pedal board. So think of your whole pedal board as it is, just put that on there, use it as if it were your amp. You're going into the front of the amp, or you can do 4-cable method, and you have the versatility of changing between different amps. So if one song you want to use your pedal board in front of, say, a Vox, and the next song you want it in front of a Marshall, you have that option. That's something you can do by using it that way. Another way you can use it as just an effects unit. Don't use any of the cabs, don't use any of the amps of any kind, just use it for effects. A small little effects unit takes up a small section of your board. Maybe you don't want something as big as the HX Effects, which is the Line6 current version of the M13, so it's just the effects from the Helix products. You can also use it as just a standalone interface. So you don't want to use any of the stuff that's in there, or you want to use some sort of plugins or amp sims, things of that nature. You can still use the device as an interface. There are so many ways it can be used, and you definitely shouldn't sleep on it. Let's get into bass players. All right, let's talk about bass and why I think this little guy is the solution and maybe the ultimate tool for bass players, just as much as guitar players, but maybe even more so for bass players. And that is because most bass signals are more streamlined. Usually maybe a couple effects, compressor going directly into an amp. Obviously there are people out there that use giant pedal boards, and if that's something you do, then incorporate this little guy into the pedal board and use it how you would. But for this instance, I'm talking about what are the bare bones of what people typically go after for good bass tones, and usually that's just a nice amp that's EQ'd well, and maybe a little bit of distortion, maybe a little bit of chorus, maybe some compression. That's all you really need, right, to get a great tone. So you have that here, and a thing that I think Line6 failed on when advertising for the Helix products is how much stuff is in there for bass. There are tons of amps in there. You got Ampeg, you've got Gallium-Kruger, you've got Mesa. There's just a lot of options. Any company you can think of that is a staple in the bass world is represented inside the Helix units, and that is represented here in the HX Stomp. The plus side to it is that you don't need as much crazy stuff going on with your signal chain for bass typically. So you can have your amp, your distortion, compression, so on and so forth in this little tiny unit, and maybe just bring that. If the PA where you're playing is great enough, you may not need to bring anything other than your bass, a couple of cables, and this guy, and it could all fit in a gig bag, which is pretty amazing. Here's why I think it's awesome, because you can run your effects in parallel. So you can run your clean bass signal on top, completely unaffected, and you can run a signal in parallel with it that is distorted and have those both come out at the end. So what happens there is you don't lose any of the definition in your notation, in your playing, and you don't lose any of the low end associated with the bass signal. And that's really important because a lot of times when you're using just a standard distortion pedal in front of a bass amp, you lose something in translation. You may lose some low end and have to adjust it in your EQ, but not every song maybe requires, distortion. Maybe some songs require distortion in one part and not another, and then you're really messing with your EQ curve, turning on and off these things. So that's something that's super beneficial in that you're able to run things in parallel and really get the most out of your tone. And I think that is kind of the ultimate thing for a bass player, is to have this texture but not lose all of the oomph and focus of filling in the bass frequencies. So for that reason, almost exclusively, this is the ultimate tool, because it's flexible, lots of amps to choose from, lots of effects to choose from, lots of cabinets to choose from. Obviously the IRs from third-party companies are available to you for bass just as much as they are for guitar. So you can really find the things that work best for you. You can even mimic your current rig inside the HX Stomp and have it as a backup should your real rig go down. If you only need a few presets, like you just need an amp, clean sound, distortion, a little bit of chorus, that's it. That's your whole thing. Your amp is here, your cab is here, your effects are here. This is everything, and you're not losing any definition in your tone because of the parallel signal option. That's a thing that is not available to you in the Pod Go. And the Pod Go is something that I'll do a video on when I actually have one and can do it, but I'm already seeing limitations in its capabilities, looking at the schematics, looking at the videos of people reviewing it. It is almost more so for guitar than it is bass. And again, Line6 is treating it that way. I'm sure there are bass options in there, but you're not going to have the ability to run effects in parallel. So everything is going to be just like it would be on a regular amp. It's also significantly larger, maybe a little more cost effective at this point, but for the added $100 or so, getting this guy and having something that's this portable, this versatile, is it's pretty amazing. And being able to do all of the crazy parallel processing and layering and using all the MIDI stuff, which is also not available on the Pod Go. This is the jam. And I realize that the Pod Go is a thing that people are really after right now because it's the new product. This guy's getting slept on right now, and it doesn't deserve it because it's a better product in my opinion. It's much more versatile and overall just better. It's a better product. Tonally, they're pretty similar, but your flexibility here, pretty amazing, and you should definitely look into it. The next update for 3.0 on the Helix products is going to bring in an extra 2 blocks, so now you're dealing with 8 blocks, and that really opens up more options to you for carving out your tone the way you'd like. And there's always new amps coming, there's new effects coming. Definitely mess with this. No slight against the Pod Go. I want to check one out and get a feel for it myself, but ultimately this would be my suggestion over it because of the flexibility. All right, so that about does it. That is why I think the Line6 HX Stomp is the ultimate tool for any guitar player, bass player, or someone who just has a studio and wants something that's super versatile and compact. Lots of options. The world is your oyster with the HX Stomp. Like I said, I know there are other things out there. None, in my opinion, hit the nail on the head quite as much as the HX Stomp. So I hope you found the video helpful. If you're someone who is curious about the Stomp, maybe it leaned you in that direction. Maybe you're someone who's fighting between going with the Pod Go or the HX Stomp. And my suggestion to you is to take into consideration your needs. If you're someone who just wants to be able to kind of plug and play, you don't need MIDI options, you don't need parallel processing, you don't want to do all that stuff, and you just want to have a great amp tone and plug in and go, maybe the Pod Go is for you. If you're someone who wants a little more options with how you can run things, the HX Stomp is the jam. It also is much more flexible with connectivity than the Pod Go. That is just my take, and obviously you have your own. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch the video. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and until next time, it's been me, it's been you. This is Gear Stuff and Things.